Good afternoon. Thank you for everybody coming today. We're gathered here outside the Willard Drug Treatment Center. The closure announced by the governor this past week is affecting this facility. It's affecting all the members, the families in this community. With us today is Senator Helming, Assemblyman Palmisano, Assemblyman Gallahan, and local members of the community. I'm going to ask that Senator Helming come up and speak, and from there we'll move through. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I wish we were here under better circumstances. Like many of you, on Monday, I learned through the media that the state decided to close Willard. I have to admit that I was angry on Monday, and I'm still angry today. And I just want to comment, when Governor Hochul first took office, one of her first pledges, her first commitments to all of us, to everyone across the state, was that she was going to be transparent and open. I ask you, is this transparency and is this being open with the community when you exclude the community on a decision of this magnitude? So I'm here today to support our corrections officers and the staff, everyone who has dedicated their lives to Willard, who has dedicated their lives to public service. To me, this is so much more than just discussing about a building closing. This is about people whose lives are being uprooted, our families who live right here, our children who attend the schools here. It's about our local businesses. You know what else? I'm not even sure that docs or the governor have considered about how our infrastructure is tied to Willard. Whether we're talking about our water, about the sewer projects that are underway, about the Office of Aging having offices and providing services out of this location, about the food pantries that are supplied food for our community that is already struggling right out of this location. These are all things that should have been discussed with the governor and the commissioner before this announcement was made. This community and this county, they have contributed so much to the history and the success of our region and our state, a place that means so much to all of us. And I want the COs and I want the community to know how much I appreciate all of you, your dedication, your courage, and your professionalism. You deserve better than this. I know it's hard, I know it's frustrating, and I know that it's scary. It is for all of us. The state kept us all out of this decision, but I want you to know together we're not going to let them keep us out of it anymore. On Monday, after I found out about Willard closing, I called the acting commissioner, Annucci, right away. He got an earful, and I have a call into the governor to let her know exactly what I think. You cannot make these local decisions without involving local people. I am demanding that representatives from this community, including Supervisors David Hayes and Joe Borst, members of the school, members of the Board of Supervisors from Seneca County, be at the table from here on out. We won't let our employees and the families be left behind. We can't let this facility go dormant, and we can't make this community suffer through yet one more closure. We must hold the governor and the commissioner accountable. We must make sure that they hear our voice. Government has to be held accountable. But to everyone who's out there, everyone who's here, everyone who's listening, I want to say something very important. I want you to listen carefully. Elections have consequences. Your vote matters. You need to get registered and you need to get out and vote. This decision to close this prison and 6 others was made because in the New York State budget there was language giving the governor the authority to do so. Look at who voted for that. Look at who supports that. Look who supports these reforms that are giving criminals more privileges in our state, that aren't holding criminals accountable. The governor has also touted that the closing of these prisons is going to save taxpayers money. Well, this is what I'd like to ask the taxpayers. With all these closings that have happened over the last decade or so, and all the millions and millions of dollars that have been saved, have you seen a decrease in your taxes? Do you feel safer in your communities right now? With the bail reform, the Less is More Act, do you feel safer? Again, I want to remind you that elections have consequences and people need to get out and vote and let your voices be heard. I proudly stand with all of you today. You know what? I've been here with you since I was first elected 5 years ago, and I will be with you every single day. God bless all of you.
Thank you for being here today. First, to the brave men and women who work here behind us in this facility and in the Southport and all the facilities across the state. Please know there are many of us who appreciate your sacrifice and the dangerous job you do each and every day to keep us safe. I know Senator Helming does, Assemblyman Gallahan does, Congressman Reed does, myself, our local officials, town and county, and the public here does. As the Senator mentioned, Governor Hochul announced this week 6 additional prison closures, including Willard behind us in Southport and other facilities, just before the holidays. Under the current law, it usually requires a 1-year notification to close down a facility. Unfortunately, this liberal progressive legislature, because the governor requested it, gave him the governor authority to shut down a facility with just 90 days notification. Senator Helming, Assemblyman Gallahan, and myself did not support that, and neither did a number of other people. Fast-track prison closures in 90 days, 1 year is hard enough, but fast-tracking them in 90 to 120 days just adds insult to injury and is a complete disrespect to the dedicated individuals who work here in a very dangerous environment each and every day, and to the local communities that house these facilities. They will say nobody's going to lose a job. Please. 3 to 4 months is not enough time for a family to decide to sell or buy a house or move, uproot their kids and move to a new school. Many individuals will have to travel 2+ hours to get to another facility if they find one. We know of other closures that have taken place. There are some individuals, employees have been displaced 2+ times with the closure from Livingston to Gowanda and now Southport and here in Willard. Again, these fast tracking of these closures, any closures, is a complete disrespect and a devastating blow to the dedicated employees, the families, and the local communities and the economy. More than 200 corrections officers and sergeants are going to lose their jobs. This affects over 400 total employees with the civilians. Governor Hochul, these are people. These are families being hurt by your decision, and for no reason other than political. This is unfortunately a continuation of the terrible and dangerous policies of her predecessor. Prison closures, now I think we'll be up over 24 prison closures. Eliminating and restricting the use of special housing units to segregate our most dangerous inmates, an important tool for our corrections officers to be safe. The state's going to continue to say, as the senator mentioned, and how they always say when they do these closures, they're going to save money. But what about the $42 million in construction costs that have been made to this building over the past 5 years? In other facilities like Southport, Ogdenburg, which was mentioned, Livingston, which was closed in 2019. On top of these supposed savings, none of these dollars are being invested back into the facilities to support our corrections officers, to stop the rising drug use, gang violence, and assaults. They're not being provided the tools they need to keep themselves safe and others safe. There's no secure vendor program to keep screen packages for drugs. No use of drug dogs at every facility. No better technology. I know when we talked about this at the budget hearings, the commissioner said, well, these cost money. But they're okay for iPads for inmates to have and make millions of hours worth of phone calls. Drugs cause violence in our correctional facilities. This administration is turning a blind eye to it. The previous administration, and now I'm sure this administration, used to like to brag and boast about the number of prisons they closed, but they failed to take responsibility that what these prison closures and these other dangerous policies have created a dangerous powder keg environment inside our correctional facilities. All you have to do is look at the Department of Corrections' own statistics. Over the past 5 years, inmate on staff assaults has increased over 38%. Inmate on inmate assaults have increased over 31% over the past 6 years. Over 1,000 each year for the past 5 years, and our inmate on staff assaults are over 1,000 as well. They say, well, there's less inmates, but this administration has no answer. Well, if we have fewer inmates, why does the violence and the dangerous assaults continue to rise? Because they're cramming more and more dangerous individuals into fewer facilities. It would be better to space out these individuals over more facilities, a safer environment, for better programming for the inmates even. But also with COVID, how does this help and it makes sense? The administration talks about repurposing these facilities for other purposes, like for drug treatment and alcohol. First of all, we know the repurposing of these closures, they don't have a good track record. All you have to do is look at Monterey Shock and other facilities as well. But the fact of the matter is, Willard is a drug treatment center that's invested millions of dollars in it over the past 5 years. This doesn't make any sense at all. The governor, you have the power to rescind this. You have the power to do the right thing and not the political thing. Again, as we talked about, this new governor is just continuing the policies we've seen over the past couple of years that favor criminals, murderers, rapists, and cop killers over those in law enforcement, our crime victims and their families, and public safety. You've seen it from the disastrous bail reform, an unchecked parole board that is releasing dangerous individuals in the street every single week, the less is more policy, and there's even more out there as well. These policies compounded with these devastating closures will lead to an increase in violence in these correctional facilities. It will devastate and hurt these employees and these families and these local communities. And it's just wrong. Governor Hochul, let me be very clear. The increase in violence these closures will create, and it will, because it does and it has. These closures, the increase in violence we will see, falls squarely on your doorstep. The employees, the families, and the local communities so devastated by your decision is totally on you. You are accountable and will be held accountable. You have failed them. Shame on you. You don't have to do this. You didn't have to do this. You don't have to do this. This is a political decision to appease to the progressive liberal base of this state. In closing, I would just like to say to the brave men and women who work here at Willard and all our correctional facilities around the state, please know how much myself, my colleagues here, our local community members, thank you and appreciate all you do for us. The dangerous job you go into each and every day to keep us safe. May God bless you and your families. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. I'm the representative for the 132nd Assembly District here. Sorry about that.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Gallahan. I'm with the 131st Assembly District, which is just north of here. This closure not only affects the 132nd that fills in, but it affects the whole state. And what's happening here is a tragedy. This announcement is just another example of how Albany is prioritizing criminals, getting mints on their pillows over the safety of law-abiding citizens. Governor Hochul should be ashamed of herself. She isn't fooling anyone here by claiming there's less people in jail because our state is so safe. Look at the record that was just set yesterday in Rochester, New York. That's one to be proud of. That's for sure. There's less people in jail now because she keeps letting them out. That's why. We're already seeing the effects of the Democrats' pro-criminal policies. Bail reform is wreaking havoc in our communities. And we can all see it every time we turn to the local news and see another shooting or another criminal committing heinous crimes, then being caught, given an appearance ticket, and let go to do it all over again. That day, many of them, the same day. We're going to see the devastating effects of this closure on our communities very soon. When instead of getting the treatment that they need, people are let out only to commit more violent crimes. This facility is one of a kind, and there's no way that this facility should ever have been on any list for closure. And I want to mention, violence against our correction officers has been rising for years, but nothing has been done to stop it. Instead, the answer is let more criminals out so they can be violent in society. This decision was made with no thought to the employees here at Willard or the effects this will have on the families in their upcoming lives. To everyone that this decision affects, please know that I'm thinking of you, that some people haven't forgotten that your lives matter, and we're fighting to bring common sense back to Albany. It's a tough fight, but we're in it every day. Senator Helming and Assemblyman Palmisano and I are down there fighting for your rights every day. And I'm proud to stand here today with those two and oppose these horrific closures all over our state. We're not going to take this lying down, and we'll be fighting together to put an end to these quick and inefficient closures. And I'd like to close with a saying that has been one of my favorites for many years, being in sales for over 30 years. Nobody plans to fail, but they fail to plan. And this is the perfect example of that, failure to plan. Thank you.
I just want to touch on a couple things. My name's Mark the Burgomaster. I'm the Western Region Vice President for NYSCOPBA, New York State Correction Officer and Police Benevolent Association. We represent the correction officers statewide. My responsibility is to the 6,100 members in the Western Region. But this goes beyond that. The essential employees in the state of New York have been stomped on, continued to be stomped on by a progressive agenda that just does not take into any consideration safety. We are being assaulted at record rates. We are seeing injuries and violence at record rates. People want to bring out and point out fiduciary responsibilities to the state. What's the responsibility on the injury to an officer that has to walk around with a scar for the rest of his life because of one inmate combined or wrongly classified in a facility, and he acts on that officer or that sergeant or that civilian? We represent the correction officers in the state of New York, but we're charged with the duty to protect everyone that works behind these walls. These officers are being hurt. They are not getting their days off. We are understaffed. We are being assaulted at record rates. The issue comes down to is over a decade ago, we started a project that was dangerous. They decided to right-size our prison system, combining, slowly closing in a network to where you only have the most violent people, and you have stripped our tools through legislation that were passed by a progressive legislature and Senate. These are people that don't have to work in these settings. You've taken away our ability to run these facilities, to control movement, to control and find contraband, to search inmates, to search property that's being sent into the inmates, and you offer no solutions or anything progressive moving forward. You are turning these facilities into a nightmare. Every one of the men and women in these facilities came into work every single day during this pandemic. We still adhere to some pandemic rules inside these facilities. This is not over as far as we're concerned in these walls, and the state adheres us to those rules. Yet they're going to start moving and shuttling inmates all over the state to empty out facilities. The governor announced last week that she wanted to repurpose jails. She wants to see these facilities for treatment. Okay, I'll take that at face value. But then your very next action is to close 4 facilities that are alternative to incarcerations. Southport Correctional Facility had a step-down program. It was being repurposed so that inmates can have their behavior modified through education, counseling. Close that facility. You close Willard Drug Treatment Center right here. The whole purpose of this facility is to help these people get back out onto the streets, to help them recover, to help them down a road and a journey. You can go after Mariah Shock. Again, another facility, short-term, alternative to incarceration. Rochester Work Release, Again, another facility that incorporates work release as a program to get these people back into society safely. Everything is being shortcut. The numbers show clearly inmate populations down to 31,500 and change. They're going to let more out, and they're going to continue to let more out. Crime isn't going down. We're just ignoring it on a state level. The communities, the towns, and the cities are stuck with it. And yet the essential workers, the correction officers, correction sergeants, lieutenants, everyone who works inside these walls suffer the price every single day. Thank you for coming. I'll take any questions if you have any.
Is there anybody that works here this year that might want to say something? We couldn't come out.
No?
Okay.
Did you?
No, I'm fine.
No, sir.
I just wanted to give an opportunity to somebody who works here what's going to mean for them.
Quite frankly,
I understand, and I understand.
Yeah.
But if you don't work here,
Yeah.
then you really can't explain what it means to somebody.
well, I can give you a little insight because I work at Southport, and Southport's closing. So whether you're at a closing facility, whether it be Willard or whether Southport, my home jail, is closing, you're on the road. You do not know. You're going to have to transfer. You don't know where you can reach, whether Albany personnel will move you. Then you have to rely on the RIF, which is tied to civil service law. And then again, it becomes about availability where Albany wants to put you. Most of these officers will not know where they are reporting to until roughly the 20 to 30 days prior to the day they have to show up to that facility. Whether it's right down the road to 5 Points or whether it's Coxsackie, Great Meadow, Clinton, you can be placed anywhere. The state will guarantee that you keep a job. The state has an item for you. The state right now can't keep staffing coming in. The problem is you may be required to travel 3, 4, 5 hours, and you're only going to get, at best, 30 days notice from the time your orders are cut and you get notified to where you have to show up. So closures do weigh on your mind. And we work with that year after year after year. Every year it gets slid into the governor on a 30-day bill. Well, we're going to close jails in 90 days. You don't even get the benefit of the 1-year notice anymore. They circumvent it every single time. Now I have to plan accordingly. Once we get a notice, now you have to start wondering where you can reach, where you can go. What am I going to do with my kids? The communities are affected because the majority of the officers and sergeants and lieutenants and staff that work in these facilities, they are your softball coaches. They are your little league coaches. They run your recreation programs. They are embedded in these communities, and you lose every aspect of that when you have to uproot them and ship them out of town. I can tell you from a closure facility, you go to bed every night, and you don't know where you're going to be in 30 days.
Can I just say that?
Just real quick,
We have our-
question for him. How many will it affect here? How many are in your union that work here?
Right now there's 205 officers and there's
10 sergeants.
10 sergeants. And then you have the lieutenant and civilian staff. I believe it's somewhere right now currently, I think they're sitting at 315 staff that have to go somewhere. Oh, go
You
ahead.
can imagine in a small community like this, as Mark said, how this is absolutely devastating to the community for the reasons he said. Our corrections officers just don't serve inside those 4 walls. They are integral, instrumental to our community. They volunteer their times at hospice. They volunteer their times, as Mark said, as coaching Little League. We have so many people here who can tell you how devastating, if this facility closes, it is to this community. We have Chairman of the Seneca County Board of Supervisors here, Bob Heisen, who has been working for years to make improvements to the sewer system. It's integrally linked to Willard. That's at risk now. We have Supervisor Joe Borst here from Ovid, who has so many concerns, not only about the sewer project, but the water project and the power project. We have representatives from the food pantry here, from the community health organization, from the Office of the Aging. These are all programs that they're detrimental to the success of our community, and they're all linked to Willard. So when Albany made the decision to close, they've impacted more than, as I said, just a building, just 4 walls. It's disgusting.
Do you think that the legalization of marijuana and also the
Right now, across the state of New York, we are seeing a tremendous spike in violent crimes. And what is coming out of Albany is not something to do more to protect our residents, our constituents, our communities. What we're seeing coming out of Albany, like we just saw in the last couple more, are bills that are designed to release more criminals. The Less is More Act, which really hamstrings law enforcement and our judges when it comes to parole. Now our judges can't send people who would benefit from Willard here for drug treatment services. It's just ironic that the governor talks about how she wants to do more to support drug treatment at a time when we really need it, and then turns around and closes a facility that offers those very services. So yes, there's a direct link to the radical legislation that's coming out of Albany and the increase we see in violent attacks. And as was mentioned earlier, the attacks that are occurring within the four walls of our correctional facilities. Incarcerated individuals attacking corrections officers, attacking each other. It just continues to rise, and the consolidation of these facilities is we're just gonna see a continuous spike.